Thanks a lot for the participation in this meeting today in the framework of our subnetwork on transport and logistics. Some few information, updated information by UNIMED. We have currently 138 members from 23 countries of both shores of the Mediterranean. We have universities from all southern Mediterranean countries, from Morocco to Syria, the European Mediterranean countries, from Spain to Greece, then also some not EU member like Albania, but also the Northern Europe like Finland. And then we have also participation from the Gulf, from Iraq, which is a new, in some way, a new country for UNIMED, but we are working also to include, in some way, to involve more and more Iraqi universities in our. This year we celebrate 30 years of activity. We were thinking to make a lot of events and celebrations related to the 30 years of UNIMED. Unfortunately, during this COVID time, it's quite difficult to arrange this, but we are in any case preparing ourselves and our members to celebrate in the best way possible this important moment of our academic and networking life. The main role of UNIMED is to improve internationalization of universities in the region, thinking that universities play an important and political role for the institutional, economic, and cultural and social cohesion of the area. I think and we think that in the long term, universities can build another perspective of Mediterranean. At the moment, we have to be honest among us, that we have a very negative storytelling related to Mediterranean. And our role is to contribute to create another storytelling about Mediterranean. This could be possible through academia, through universities, students, through mobility of academic representatives in our some numbers about UNIMED. I already mentioned the number of members and countries. We have 15 memorandum of understanding with the important institutions, international institutions like FIO, European Training Foundation, or European Investment Bank, and some others. Then we created 12 subnetworks, and I will explain in a moment. We have around 35 projects financed, most of them by European Commission, a team member, 20 people, most of them based in Rome, but also we have some other antenna in the region, in Portugal, in France, in Morocco, and at the University of Naples. The main area, the main initiative for UNIMED looking at universities in the region is how to improve autonomy of our education system. You know that academic freedom is under danger at the moment, not only in the Southern Mediterranean, but also in some European countries. But one of our priorities is how to improve autonomy, academic freedom, how to improve the governance in Southern Mediterranean countries. Another important priority is regional integration. As you know, universities in the region and higher education system in the region, they prefer to talk directly to European Union countries or the European Union itself instead to talk among them. And this is a pity for the region, that is the less integrated at the economic level of the world. And another important topic is how to improve the social responsibility of universities, to invite the university to play a role in their own local, national, and international environments. These are some areas of activity of UNIMED: autonomy, as I already mentioned, and social responsibility, learning innovation, that is important, obviously, also the impact of COVID-19 in our learning society. The role of higher education in crisis situation. This is the reason why we're working a lot, for instance, in Libya and for refugees, and obviously research innovation. Then some other units of UNIMED, just to mention that we work, for instance, for intercultural dialogue, for migration and refugees, how to improve social science and humanities cooperation in the Euro-Mediterranean region, mobility of students, and so on. And we are also trying, for instance, to improve the students' engagement in UNIMED Valley. That is an important aspect to arrive directly to talk to students. About our projects, we have projects in all these areas, from governance to interregional cooperation, from learning innovation to recognition of qualification, and so on. This means, this shows you that UNIMED is not only related to one topic or some topics, but we work through and with our members. This means that we can work on many aspects of academic life of our region. The main idea is to work on common priority. Of course, this is the way to achieve the goal of regional integration. I already mentioned about the subnetworks. The main goal of every subnetwork is to improve scientific cooperation in a particular topic, thinking that we have common priorities, and the Mediterranean region is important to not only once we talk about intercultural, but also if we talk about common priority, from climate change, for instance, to transport and logistics. These are the subnetworks that we have at the moment. As you can see, there are some that are very specific and some other that are very transversal. Tourism and transport are very specific, related to important priority, for instance, but also we have mobility and intercultural dialogue, or migration, or e-learning that very transversal, important. Just two very small example of projects that we are doing in a particular topic that are in some way related to transport and logistics. This is an InterregMed program, InterregMed project called the Urban Transport. This is related only on the European Mediterranean dimension, and there is a project related how to, in some way, to include in a common project local authorities, academics, and authorities and companies that work in the framework of the urban transport system. The main idea about this project is that only with an alliances among all these actors, we put ourselves in the best position to arrive to offer solution to our problem, in particular to urban transport system. And it's not only the responsibility is not only on the hands of the local authority or in the government, and not only in the academic sector, but only working together we are able to provide to our society the right opportunities and the right solution for this important problem of this is another project. It is not related to transport, but in some way show you how we can work through academic cooperation, and this is the idea to work on SDGs to support campus users to adopt eco-friendly habits. This could be in some way very, let me say, a sex idea, looking at the green policy of European Commission and so on. But at the end of the day, the main issue is that universities also could offer solution looking not only outside of the university life, but also inside, because university is more or less, in some cases, the responsibility and the approach of a town. If you consider, for instance, that Cairo University, they have 200 and a quarter of million students. It's easier to say in this way, a quarter of million of students. It's not a city, it's more than a city. And I think that university could play an important role also to try and solution looking at themselves, and not only to just to propose solution on perspective. I hope that I give you some food for reflection, and I wish you for this important day of your discussion all the best. And we are waiting your proposal, your ideas, in some way we are waiting food for reflection to improve cooperation in transport and logistics system in the Euro-Mediterranean region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcello, for presenting our network and our subnetwork. And thank you also to you and to Emilia for the friendly and professional support in organizing this event. Of course, let me thank also Matteo Colleoni from the University of Milano-Bicocca in Italy, Maria Attard from the University of Malta, and Khaled Al-Sahili from the University of An-Najah in Palestine for accepting to be the speakers of this event. And of course, a big thank also to people joining us in this remote webinar. I will take a few minutes to introduce the topic and our guest speakers. Topic is mobility of universities. Universities are similar to small cities with a huge community of people, academic students, staff with their own daily activities, their student houses, departments, and also leisure facilities. So they are important nodes of attraction and generation of mobility with thousands of people moving to and from university sites. So this has a big impact on the transport system itself, on the environment, on climate change, on the urban livability. Sometimes we have very small cities hosting big universities, so the impact might be very, very, very huge. So this is why university must have their own policy to reduce this impact and resources to deal with the policy implementation of actions in this field. And in my opinion, a university can accomplish these objectives in two basic lines. One is influencing the choices of public administrations and transport operator in the context where they are hosted. And the other one is influencing the travel behavior of students and staff and academics. And this is what is called transport demand management or mobility management, which is a demand-oriented approach to favor active mobility, transit ridership, share mobility, and while at the same time reducing the dependency on cars. So this first thematic seminar is dedicated to have a look to the experience of mobility management in some Mediterranean universities. And what I'd like to emerge is also, besides a picture of this, what is the difference in dealing with mobility management at university when compared with similar tasks in other companies? I think we have different responsibilities and skills to do this. So let me introduce the first speaker, Professor Matteo Colleoni from the University of Milano-Bicocca. He will give us a picture of the Italian experience. He is Professor of Sociology at the University of Milano-Bicocca. He is also Rector's Delegate for Sustainability and Mobility Manager as well. And we share the coordination of a working group on mobility of the Italian Network for Sustainable Development. So I think that he will condensate some years of experience in this field. Please, Matteo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Inturri, for your very kind invitation and for this presentation. And hello to everybody. Okay, start my presentation. It's okay? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the keynote speech is aimed at presenting and analyzing and mobility management at the universities, and with a particular attention to the Italian universities experience. And it will be divided into 4 parts. The first refers to the RUS, the Italian Universities Network for Sustainable Development, its objectives, goals, activities, and working groups organization. In the second part, attention will be devoted to the working group on mobility, which brings together the representatives of university mobility management policies, its structure, objectives, and the sub-working groups. The third part of my speech is aimed at presenting the main findings of the latest national survey on home university travels in Italian universities. And finally, the last session is related to the main activities of mobility management at Italian universities. Okay, so promoted by the CRUI, which is the Conference of Italian University Rectors from July 2015, the Italian University Network for Sustainable Development is the first experience of coordination and sharing between all Italian universities committed to the topic of environmental sustainability and social responsibility. The network currently includes 79 universities, 88% of the total, well distributed throughout our country, despite a little greater concentration in central northern Italy, as you can see on the map on the right. And the main objectives of our network are to spread the culture of sustainability, both within and outside universities, with the aim of increasing the positive impact in terms of environmental, social, and economic actions, and of course to contribute to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. More in details, the activities of our network are aimed at harmonizing institutional activities and improving the management through continuous monitoring of the state of sustainability within universities. And secondly, creating a community able to develop and spread best practices, and promoting a project and developing joint initiatives, developing a multidisciplinary approach with the purpose of contributing in the growth of the sustainable development culture, and training and updating the staff of Italian universities on the topics of sustainable development, and developing awareness and promotion campaigns to stimulate the stakeholders' engagement, and finally, increasing collaboration with public and private businesses in order to achieve goals on the so-called third mission of the university. Our network has set up thematic groups focusing on transversal and relevant topics to achieve the objectives of our network. The working groups are autonomous and in their internal organization, and they periodically report the outputs of their activities on the coordination committee of the RUS network. There are currently 7 working groups: climate change, food, education, energy, inclusion and social justice, resource, waste, and of course, mobility. Since active since the 2015, the working group mobility brings together 69 Italian universities and more or less 150 members. The working group implement policies of academic mobility management, of course, promotes plans for home university mobility, encouraging the use of public transport and sharing, and limiting at the same time the access to university and buildings to private cars, and notably traditionally fueled. Another important goal is to raise the awareness on sustainable mobility and to promote innovation, technological and organizational change. And particular attention is devoted to the promotion of active mobility, walking and cycling. The working group mobility is in turn divided into 4 working groups involved in the following topics: mobility management and the relations with the companies and institutions, research, data and indicators, internationalization, and innovation and technology. In order to comply with the requirement of one decree, the Decree 27 March 1998, entitled Sustainable Mobility in Urban Areas, in Italy, in our country, all public institutions and all private companies with more than 300 employees are required to nominate a mobility manager, like Professor Inturri, like myself. In general, each university mobility manager gathers information about the daily mobility of the university population by carrying out surveys of the home, work, study journeys taken by staff or taken by students. In order to collect national update and comparable data on home university journeys, and in order to provide useful information for mobility management policies, in 2020, last year, our working group promoted the second national survey on commuting at Italian universities, based on a sample of 51 universities and 114,000 respondents. As compared to Italian overall daily mobility demand, the level of demand for university mobility revealed at least 3 positive aspects. First, a better modal split with a low share of journeys by private cars, more or less 22%, a greater use of public transport, 58%, and the level of active mobility in line with the national values, more or less 19%. Secondly, a good degree of intermodality and the use of shared vehicles. And lastly, of course, a favorable context in which to innovate mobility. However, 3 negative aspects of the mobility demand entail targeted governance by universities' mobility managers. And the first, the lack of homogeneity in the modal split in relation to the size, to the location, and the type of the university population. A split that is most marked at the smaller universities, particularly in central and southern Italy. And second, the low level of active mobility on the part of students, more than on the part of teachers and staff, because of the great distances and they have to travel, students notably, and between home to university. And because of the lack or more or less the poor quality of cycling and the working infrastructures and services. And the third, and another critical questions refers to the long travel time and the substantial distances of the journeys that many students take in order to get to the universities. For the average Italian student, the journey to university is 28 kilometers long and takes 43 minutes each way. The difference is explained by the dispersion of the place where Italian students reside and their tendency in Italy to live at home with their parents. And this results in the widespread use of private cars by those who live and study in areas where public transport is poor, and the tendency to minimize their attendance at university are just two of the most significant negative consequences of such a long journeys and the time they take. And in the following two maps, it's possible to see the temporal access to universities in Milan and in Rome urban areas. On the left in Milan and on the right in Rome urban areas. The two urban areas have a comparable university mobility profiles with an average home university distance of about 25 kilometers and an average travel time of 51 in Milan and 56 minutes in Rome. Moreover, in both cases, a consistent number of students, 25%, takes about an hour and a half to reach the university. Another negative consequence refers to pollution related to mobility. University cities characterized by long home university distances and by a lack of poor and public transport system are the most polluted. The graph shows the quantity of carbon dioxide equivalent produced by university student journeys, just of university student journeys, a part of the staff and teachers journeys. On the left, the average daily value for the round trip equal to 5.13 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent. And on the right, the average weekly value equal to 1507 point. The highest values of pollutant related to mobility concern universities placed in some regions where students travel long distances to reach universities using especially cars. So the aforementioned critical elements require actions to manage the daily travel for the university population with the aim of reducing the use of private cars and notably traditionally fueled, and increasing the journeys made by public transport and active mobility, and improving the quality of university mobility. Italian policies and the actions for university mobility management can be divided into 4 different strategies: concession, restriction, persuasive, and innovative strategies. And the policies on concessions are aimed to minimize the use of private vehicles by supporting active mobility and public transport, of course. Concessions are the most widespread type of policy in Italian universities, because they are often included in the benefits offered to employees. Policies that promote public transport are normally based on agreements with the local public transport companies in the form of a discounted travel card issued to employees and in some cases also to students. These policies have proven very effective wherever they have been implemented, and they have succeeded in shifting a significant number of people from private to public transport, also encouraging the use of public transport for other journeys as well as for commuting. There are also other agreements with an increasing number of companies that provide shared mobility services. Having only recently appeared on the transport market, in the space of a few years, these services have led a considerable increase in the number of users who share vehicles. Indeed, the academic world has immediately looked with interest at this sector, which by offering shared mobility services finds a privileged target in university students. Furthermore, since concession strategy is aimed at supporting pedestrian mobility and restricting the use of private transport, and the measure also include the activation of the university shuttle services, which at some Italian universities are provided free of charge within the campus. In this slide, you can see some pictures concerning sharing mobility and sharing a bicycle at one Italian university. And because restriction policies on cars limit the right to private travel, Italian universities adopt them much less frequently than concession policies. So, moreover, there are continuing debates between different points of view in relation to restricting the right to use private cars. Sorry. These are exemplified by the complaint of the university employees about the recent proposal to ban private cars from accessing or parking public spaces of our universities. However, some Italian universities are adopting car access and parking rules, and that take into account a travel sustainability index that has been calculated considering the home university distance, the family needs, and the ease of access to public transport. So, according to the point, the value on this and sustainability index is possible to park and to access, or not, it's not possible to park to access to the university's places. Policies to restrict the use of private cars are leading some universities to replace their car fleets with a hybrid or fully electric cars, or to reduce the number of car journeys by encouraging universities carpooling. And a last restriction measure under debate in Italy is to ban the use of the airplane for business trips for destination of less than 500 kilometers to advantage of a high-speed railway. Persuasive strategies. Persuasive strategies are based on the assumption that restrictive measures are not sufficient to change mobility choices, and that it's necessary to intervene on values norms, attitudes of individuals. Moreover, since mobility is an habitual behavior, difficult to change with rational rules and explanations, changing it requires that people be given sufficient time to experience the effectiveness of changing their travel habits. So, measures to encourage the use of active mobility and public transport via communication and awareness-raising campaigns like personalized marketing programs are aimed to respond to this purpose. In recent years, some universities in Italy have launched personalized marketing programs that offer an alternative to using private cars. One of the most successful IPET, individual persuasive eco-travel technology, is an application that gives the students a personalized travel solution by tracking their home university routes by GPS and sending them a personalized travel plan aimed to suggest alternatives more sustainable for their health and, of course, for the environment. A less focused but more widely and disseminated way of supporting persuasive measures is by participating in a national and international sustainable mobility campaigns that often use prize-winning competitions to encourage virtuous mobility styles, like the European Mobility Week or UMOB Life, the European Network for Sustainable Mobility at Universities. The aim of innovative strategies is to promote study and research into the innovations that are most likely to be accepted in settings like universities. A number of Italian universities are developing and technological and organizational proposals to improve the mobility of their populations. On the technological front, several universities are using their scientific know-how to seek solutions that reduce the energy consumption of vehicles and, more generally, increase the use of urban mobility infrastructures. Particular attention is being given to studying and researching electric vehicles, power supply technologies, analyzing the correct urban locations for charging point, or developing a new inductive and charging system, or testing photovoltaic panels integrated into car bodies. And however, so far, a few studies and a few trials have been undertaken on innovative organizational measures that could improve the governance of mobility flows. These most commonly fall into the category of the so-called immobility measures aimed at discouraging unnecessary journeys. They include campaigns to reduce meetings that require physical travel or the use of teleworking. Some Italian universities are also piloting measures designed to modify the work and the teaching calendars and hours of the university populations in order to desynchronize flows from and to the university buildings, and in order to reduce traffic congestion at the peak times. Also, a better distribution of the presence on campus would lead to a more efficient use of energy resources or reduced consumption. Such a measure to desynchronize the academic offer are common and in Italy, and still run up against the rigidities that prevent them from being diffused in Italy. So, to conclude my presentation, the data obtained from the national survey and the actions, strategies, and policies presented in my speech enable us to identify 4 themes on which universities should focus their attention in order to improve the governance of mobility. The first one refers to the role played by universities in the local governance of the mobility and accessibility. Within the more general system of urban and metropolitan mobility in Italy, we are beginning to see in a number of national experiences the first signs that universities are becoming involved in the governance of academic mobility. The second theme is concerned with extending the idea of mobility to the idea of accessibility and the right to study. So this is particularly important in the university sector, where people travel to places of learning, such as universities, in order to get professional skills. Integrated mobility policies are linked to the right to study, which includes the ability to get to the university, to make use of its resources at the proper time and in a correct way. And like many other highly populations, students spend a considerable part of their daily time on the move. They often spend this time studying and interacting, where at waiting areas or on board of the vehicles. So the quality of such environments influence the quality of what they do throughout their journeys. Since a university mobility manager own the best knowledge on the lifestyle and the needs of the university population, they must become involved in the planning of those places. And finally, the fourth theme is concerned with organizational changes. Unlike changes to infrastructures, which require substantial resources, making changes to how time and places of study are organized falls more easily within the sphere of academic management. But in Italy, such changes very often seem impossible to achieve because they entail transformations in everyday routine and in habitual practices. But where they can be tried in a way tailored to the needs of the actor involved, they can lead to innovative results, in our opinion, not just in terms of mobility, but also for ordinary administration. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Matteo. You gave us a very wide, clear, and well-structured picture of what's going on in mobility management at Italian university. Of course, you had the possibility to interact with, I would say, 60, 70 mobility managers, and to capitalize the knowledge that each university is building on this topic. And I like very much the fact that universities do not compete in this field. There is a real cooperation and a transfer of knowledge and experience from one another. We will take questions at the end, but I just want to anticipate one question. So you deal with a lot of mobility managers in Italy of universities. They have different background and skills and knowledge. You're a sociologist, I'm a transport engineer. There are other mobility managers which come from the administrative staff, or they are very well good to make communication and sensibilization campaign. Are we able to depict a picture of what a mobility manager is or will be in the near future?
Yes, you're right, Giuseppe. So initially, this is a characterization because the mobility managers come from different fields, from different disciplines, of course. Most of them are the transport engineers, of course. But we have also transport economists, some psychologists, sociologists, and political scientists as well. And I think this is a resource for mobility management. And I think it's a resource also to have a mobility manager coming from the staff, from the employees sector, because they know very well the structure, the procedure of the administrative and the university scale. For the future, okay, in my opinion, in the next future, and also thanks to the new decree coming from the new government, the new Minister of Infrastructure and Mobility, Sustainable Mobility, and we are expecting first, from the point of view of a quantitative point of view, an increasing number of mobility managers in Italy, in the universities, but also in enterprises and institutions. My expectation is to have a mobility manager better prepared in mobility management intervention and action, thanks to the collaboration, increasing collaboration between mobility managers at different scales. And my third expectation is to get more mobility managers managing at the intermediate level, not just at the level of enterprises or specific universities, but the managing at the intermediate territorial level, for example, at the scale of the metropolitan areas, for example, or the scale of the provinces. And this is very good. It's an important achievement in order to improve the level of collaboration between different mobility managers and acting in a context, in a local context.
Thank you very much, Matteo. Thank you very much again. Now I have the pleasure to turn to Professor Maria Attard from the University of Malta, which will give us a speech on green travel initiatives at the University of Malta campus. Maria Attard is Professor, Head of Geography and Director of the Institute for Climate Change and Sustainable Development at the University of Malta, and she is co-editor in many important journals such as Research in Transportation Business and Management, Case Studies on Transport Policy, Journal of Transport Geography. And she's been doing a lot of consulting activities with the government, developing many projects, and is also active in a steering committee of the World Conference on Transportation Research and the Nectar Network, which is a community of transport economists. So, Maria, thank you again. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Giuseppe. So it was a pleasure hearing the Italian initiatives in this field by Professor Colleoni. I want to have now the opportunity, and I thank Giuseppe for this, to present some of the initiatives which we have been doing at the University of Malta. Of course, the context is and the geography is particularly different, but what you will see, of course, is that the bottom line is that we are dealing with a university campus, so we are dealing with the same or similar circumstances across the different sites. And what I hope to achieve with this presentation is to give you an overview of some of the possibilities that can be achieved within a medium-sized university as we are, but also within limited resources, because of course we also struggle with the issues of resources, and unfortunately we do not have laws such as the ones that were described for Italy, where green travel are dictated by law. So the university, you will see, was one of the first, and I think it still is to a certain extent, the only institution to have mobility management as part of its initiatives. So just to give you an idea of the context, so the University of Malta is situated on a campus, well, I think I would say in the center of the urban area, which is surrounding the city of Valletta. You can see it here on the map. It is a particularly interesting campus because whilst it is a campus within urban area, so it is an urban campus, it is surrounded by a protected valley on one side, and two major axes of the road network of the island. And also it is adjacent to the National Hospital, which is also another attraction, a major attraction in terms of traffic and travel. It is surrounded by a number of other localities. So as I said, it is an urban campus. And the distance to the capital city is only 6 kilometers. So we're really talking of short, very short distances overall. So if you take an aerial view, you have the axis, the main roads. This one is the north-south link, and this one is the east-west link. We have a protected valley at the north, and the major hospital, the National Hospital on the side. And the campus is made up of a number of buildings, as you can see, with various access points. And it's characteristic of the campus being a ring road campus with limited access to vehicles, in actual fact, within the campus itself, except for the car park areas, but I'll talk about that a bit later. As part of the, and I was pleased to see the mention of the Interreg Med program earlier on, the University of Malta was part of the CampSam project, which was funded by Interreg Med a few years ago now, brought together 6 universities in the Mediterranean. But for one of the things that we wanted to look at and to use, particularly for explaining the issues to the administration, was the impact that on land of our mobility practices. And we did a scan of the university land area. Of course, one of the issues that I would imagine many universities have is, of course, land resources and the need for expansion. And as you've seen, we have limitations, physical limitations to the expansion of the campus. But one of the arguments is, well, how much of our land is actually taken up by car parking spaces? And when we did this exercise, we sort of looked at how much of the area of the campus is surfaced for just car parking, how much is actually taken up by buildings, and how much are open pedestrian areas within the campus. And of course, one of the, I think the biggest shocks was that and the majority of the actual land that is developable and could potentially be used for expansion is taken up today by parking. So it is symptomatic, of course, and I'm going to lead you to a better understanding of the key problems that we have within the university in terms of the issues with car dependence. So just a bit of background, we have some 11,500 students, and then we have an additional 4,000 staff members So on an island which is, 300 square kilometers, we're not really talking about a very small, a very large area. The university could be considered a medium. It is one of, or the highest nationally funded universities. So although there are other smaller campuses, this is the main and publicly funded university. It is serviced as a campus. It is serviced by the provision of public transport. So that is our national public transport operator. We have direct routes from almost every locality in the island, also because we are next to the hospital and therefore accessibility by public transport is not particularly a big issue. We have seen the development of carpooling services, and we do offer carpooling dedicated parking for those that decide to carpool. We have also university infrastructure that connects the university with its satellites, one of which connects the university to its residents, even though this will change within the coming of years because we've moved the residents closer to the campus. And then, of course, we also have private public transport, like organized transport for staff, especially coming from Malta's second island, so Gozo, which provide services for their students, and on-demand taxi services, which have come along in the past, I would say 2 years or 3 years. I will mention it here, but I will come to it later. The university has a green travel plan in place. And here are some examples which I will deal with a bit later. But basically, the green travel plan was an important and beneficial tool for us to be able to integrate the planning and development of sustainable travel within the planning and development process of the campus. So it came into place because the campus wanted to expand and the planning authorities demanded that the university have in place a plan. But I'll come to that. I'll come to that a bit later. In addition to that, we also have the national framework within the university, which the university works within, and that is the National Transport Master Plan, published in 2016, which contains a number of measures which we could take inspiration from, of course, but also seek to contribute to as a major attraction pole within the island. And although Malta does not have a sump, or any locality in the island have a sump, the Civitas Destinations projects, which we were also part in, is looking at developing a sump, which hopefully will be published later this year as part of the region, the built-up area region of Valletta, and that includes also the university. So these are the context really of the project. When we were doing the CampSum project, and I think that was one of the key successes of the CampSum project, we actually engaged actively with a number of stakeholders within the university, but also within the urban and peri-urban mobility planning for the area. So the CampSum project gave us the opportunity, or provided us for the opportunity through local working group meetings to engage with the main key stakeholders. And today these are our main supporters. So we have the cycling advocacy groups. We have the public transport operator who is very keen to work with us, particularly, and you will see from the examples later, on public transport provision for students and so on. We also have the local councils. Of course, the engagement varies, and of course there is a cycle of local council elections, but we do generally have a very good relationship with them. And then of course within the university, our estate and works department, the student council, they all provide useful support. Our institute, I am the director, as Giuseppe hinted, of the Institute for Climate Change and Sustainable Development. We coordinate, in actual fact, the Green Travel Plan. So I am what would be considered the mobility manager for the university in the Italian context. But within the project, we also coordinated the local working groups. We collected data, and then, of course, looked at the data across the different campuses within the CampSum project. We conducted a lot of awareness campaigns, and this was very important for us as well. And it also had a share and transfer of knowledge about the GTP experiences with other universities. So the experiences that we sort of share in this kind of environment were also available through the CampSum project. So one of the things that we looked at, and which I think the whole initiative of green travel planning started as well, was an interest among a number of departments and research institutions within the university to develop research specific to the needs of the university campus. And so this is one example where I worked with faculty members from ICT to develop the technology and prototype for a shared demand responsive transport service for the university. And that was something which led to a lot of discussion. This is indeed a photo taken from a local newspaper, which led eventually, I think it was just over a year, when we published the results of the project, that we started seeing the development of carpooling apps within the island, which was an interesting development because we had only thought of an on-demand service for the university. So it was very encouraging to see that happening. We also developed the app for tracking mobility of students and staff. We called it Viaggio, which in Maltese means a trip. And we developed the infrastructure to collect the information in real time from students and staff. Although I must admit there were issues with uptake, because I've also seen questions about uptake for these things. That's something we can discuss later. The CampSum project also provided us with an opportunity to collect data. And so I give you some information from that as an overview. We asked the criteria for selecting transport modes, and we see the main results being safety, reliability, and trip duration. Of course, we do not spend 43 hours to access the campus because we are too small, but in heavily congested days, believe it or not, even on a small island, trips can be quite long for students. Keeping in mind, of course, also the issue of parking. So there's a lot of cruising time, which is included in the travel time as well. We also find that the main problems relate to the road infrastructure, and keeping in mind that we have a very high level of travel by private vehicles. The road infrastructure and the congestion become one issue. And then the second one, as I hinted before, is the parking management, because of course, we do not have, well, we seem to have a lot of parking, but of course, in terms of the numbers, in terms of capacity of parking, I think we have something in the region of 600 parking spaces, and then of course, a population of 13,000, 14,000 people. So not enough, evidently parking for everyone. But there are other issues. The public transport efficiency is an issue. People recognize the environmental and energy concerns, which relates to the mobility and the issue of management. So what did the CampSum model choice surveys provide? Basically, we start seeing, of course, the dependence on the motor vehicle as a choice of travel, 32% using the bus. We have a healthy 22% that decide to walk, also because we do have a good number of students that live relatively close to the campus. Some of them are also passengers, and a 4% choose to cycle, which is good. And I'll say why it's good, because the national surveys also always kind of reflect a 0.01% of the population cycling. So here the university, I think, is doing overall very well, and scooters and so on. So I said that I was going to come back to this issue of green travel planning. The green travel planning was initiated actually as a planning requirement on the university. It is the only institution that has an actual plan. The GTP was launched in October 2010 and approved in 2011. And it also included the setting up of a committee in 2012 and the appointment of a GTP coordinator, so a mobility coordinator. We do conduct surveys to monitor the changes. So this is the survey you are looking at for the Camp Sound project. But if we look at the development of modal split over the years, since the travel plan has been in place, we see some changes. We see, of course, the number of people traveling by car is still very high, even though there seems to be some movements. Car passenger dropping, but people walking is increasing. People using the bus, still some work there, but using the bicycle is increasing, which is good. Scooters also increasing, which is good. So there seems to be some movements over time, even though, of course, 8 years is a long time to wait for change. I think we need to be a bit more proactive and faster in our changes. So I want to take you now through the initiatives that we have been looking at over the years. This is the most recent. We have been focusing a lot on active travel in the last 2 to 3 years. We have tried to look at things like nudges and behavioral economics to try and influence people's behavior. And so we went nationally, and this is taken from our TV station website, not our, sort of the national TV station that covered our project to try and sensitize people towards walking and cycling and the effectiveness of these in terms of time. And so we know that a lot of people get held up in congestion and trips become, unbelievably long. Sometimes recording 40-45 minutes in terms of travel and parking. And we wanted to identify routes where literally, it's 40 minutes to walk it to the university. And we've had very positive feedback on this kind of information. We went on to create a series of walking, cycling routes, testing them, sort of not relying on sort of Google kind of routing, because that's not particularly helpful. We wanted also, and it is linked really and truly to a PhD student who is working on walkability. His project is called Walking Malta, and he is looking at the use of citizen science in looking at what people perceive as pleasant, as comfortable, as safe, or unsafe, uncomfortable, and unpleasant in the urban area. We were also active with a workshop, and the results of a workshop which were given to the authorities in terms of measures which could improve the access to the campus, which is not an easy campus, as you have seen. The 2 major roads, it's not that easy to do that. We've also did the walking ambassadors, so identifying the champions for walking and installing a 20 speed limit. We installed infrastructure, so we have the only outdoor bicycle repair station in the island. So that facilitates, of course, stuff for cyclists. We do a lot of events for cyclists, breakfasts, activities, repairs, that highlights their importance. And we, of course, shine them out. You know, we give them a lot of importance in an attempt to improve cycling activity. We've had, of course, the major bicycle sharing opportunities, even e-bicycles later last year. And we do positive campaigns about active travelers in the island to the university. So we select staff members and we highlight what they do. Public transport, again, we work very closely with the operators to offer free public transport to the university. And we implement flexibility and teleworking, as been mentioned before. We have custom travel information, so we also have a website where people can see how they can get to the university through the different opportunities. And we also are present, of course, in all the major events on campus. So to conclude, because I see Giuseppe looking at me, achieving sustainable mobility within the context of car dependence is very difficult, and Malta has a very high level of car dependence, probably in the same range, if not more, of Italy. Several efforts are required, both in terms of the infrastructure, which can be costly and take time, but more importantly, in terms of the culture change that is required among the population to break the cycle of dependence. But if we manage at university, of course, we manage to influence the bigger population, because these are the younger people that will eventually make the decisions in the future. There are targeted and regular efforts that are needed to be maintained. So the momentum needs to be continued. Of course, we had a break because of the pandemic, but we are very active regularly. We are active very regularly every quarter, every semester, to try and keep the level of awareness going. Now, post-COVID, of course, we see an opportunity, although, of course, caution needs to be exercised here because of the potential side effects. So we've monitored, for example, teleworking, and what we noticed is that when people telework, they travel more. So they don't commute, but they do travel more on other trips during the days that they are actually working from home. So we need a bit more research into that to be effective as much as possible in implementing post-COVID measures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. I'm really impressed, though, how much work you have been doing in this field in Malta. I know that it is not an easy task because Malta has a high rate of car ownership. And so maybe it's not easy to have the support to do such actions. I was also impressed by this fight between land expansion need and car parking spaces, which is quite paradigmatic. In many, I know that some companies in Italy, they give economic benefit to employees which avoid to use the cars, and the spaces are turned into productive activities. So the same applies to our activities. So very interesting, and also your ability to stakeholder engagement, I think, is a key message to work in this field. So thank you again, and now I turn to the last speaker, Professor Khaled Al-Sahili from University of An-Najah. The Professor Sahili is associate professor at in this university in Palestine. Is specialized in transportation engineering and planning with more than 30 years of professional and academic experience. He has held the position of director of the Construction and Transportation Research Center, and also has been Dean of Faculty of Engineering and Information Technology. The presentation of Professor Al-Sahili will be slightly different because he will focus on what I think is the first step needed towards any change. That is the raising of awareness. He has measured what is the awareness on the topic of climate change and sustainable issue in general in this university, linking environmental aspect with social aspect and equity aspect. So I'm very interested in following your presentation. Thank you, Khaled.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to be here and make the presentation. As you mentioned, the title may seem different, but however, if you think deeply, they're very much into the same theme of the subnetwork and the theme of the workshop today. The two colleagues who made the presentation, they continuously mentioned the SDGs and mentioned the climate change. And so my subject is how much universities are doing this in this regard, how much our students are aware of this issue, the level of awareness in this regard. As you know, the United Nations has the 17 SDGs. 3 of these SDGs are related to the research I'm presenting, which is SDG 4 related to the quality of education, the gender equality, SDG 5, and the climate action, which is SDG 30. And we strongly believe that universities have a major role, at least in spreading the awareness among students, as well as staff. However, we do recognize that one university alone cannot do the work. It should be more an intensive effort and a cooperative effort among universities, actually globally, not only at the local level. It should be a global effort. And this is, as my 2 colleagues who made presentation, this is an urgent matter that affects the quality of life that we live in, especially with the increased demand or the increased attractiveness of private automobiles as compared to high occupancy vehicles, whether ride sharing or public transportation or an active travel of walking and cycling. Now, if we look at the university education system, if I ask, how much is knowledge or versus skills, which one we think is most students should gain more, knowledge or skills? To make it short, I do believe that, it's a balance. We do need the knowledge, but at the same time, we should be more interested in the skills. And I believe even there should be the weight for skills should be higher than the weight of knowledge, because skills, it's an everlasting thing, while knowledge could diminish over time, or could be reduced over time, but the skills, this is something that you attain for life. And how much is this related to mobility? This is, if you're talking about educational system and mobility, we're talking about behavioral issues, as my 2 colleagues mentioned. One of the critical and most important thing is to change the behavior of the travelers, or mobility towards the mobility. And in terms of students, I'm going to present how much they are aware and how much even some behavioral issues are related to some of the SDGs, more particularly about climate change. As you know, and presented previously in the 2 previous presentations, the climate change, or transport or mobility has a key role in the climate change issue. The transport sector is a major contributor to the climate change, as you do know. So, as a quick introduction, in developing countries, as some of you may know, that literacy rate has been increasing, even in developing countries, more particularly for girls. At the same time, now more universities worldwide, not just in any country, all over the world, as my colleagues in Italy, and if you look at other developed countries, even developing countries, they're more interested in the SDGs and integrating the SDGs in their educational system somehow for various reasons, of course. You know, one of which probably some of the university ranking system depends very much on how much each university is implementing, you know, or adopting the SDGs in their system. And so this is a golden opportunity in terms of spreading awareness as universities are more interested in this. And my two colleagues also mentioned a lot about these initiatives. At the same time, you know, studies all over the world, including Palestine, realized that students have a really misconception regarding climate change awareness. The concept they know it's not quite accurate. It's distracted by many misconceptions. And the studies all over the world focused more about students at the schools level, elementary and secondary level. Little have touched on students at the university level. And most of the studies being prepared in developed countries and limited ones in developing countries. Regardless where the studies have been conducted in developing or developed countries, the general conclusion, you know, most of the studies reported that the awareness level regarding environmental or particularly climate action and climate change is generally low among students. So therefore, we developed our study with the objective of answering the following questions by taking the gender and the major or the faculty factors into account. You know, what is the student level of awareness on climate change? And our universities and student societies, more particularly we paid attention to student societies, are they playing an effective role in terms of enhancing students' understanding of climate change, even and also attitudes and behavior towards climate action? So our methodology relied very much on a survey among students, particularly 450 students at An-Najah National University. The study was done on two levels. First, a preliminary study, then a more detailed study. And the focus was about environmental and climate change awareness. Also, this was supported by focus group discussions of 25 students of different majors and different genders, males and females. We also interviewed 2 college deans and the vice president for academic affairs to understand more about university policies regarding the SDGs in general and the climate change in particular. A quick background about the university. An-Najah National University, it's the largest university in Palestine in terms of student population. We're talking about 23,000 students approximately, and more females. It's particular 64% are female students. The staff is about 39% female staff. And one interesting thing that the university in last year posted the 17 SDGs all over its 4 campuses. It has 4 campuses. And they posted those as billboards on walls and in many places in each building of in the campus in both Arabic and English languages. But however, when we make a questionnaire and we interviewed students, we asked them about, have you seen those you know, SDGs and billboards? And they said, well, yeah, but we don't know what they are. Which was interesting. Yes, they've seen it, but obviously the approach need still a lot to do and to provide or to offer the message clearly to students about these 17 SDGs. And since I'm coming from the College of Engineering, so we focus more about students from the College of Engineering. Particularly, we have 11 colleges, and the largest one is the Faculty of Engineering and Information Technology, where we have 5,200 students, and which is contrary to the common tradition that close to 50% of the students are females, particularly 48.3% are female, which is really interesting. Now, more females are getting into engineering and technology majors than before. what's even more remarkable that there are some programs, particularly 14 out of 17 programs, not only females is a majority, a vast majority. We're talking about 75%, some of them even reaching 85% females. We focus more about, in our study, about the scientific societies. We have 11 societies in the engineering. These are student chapters of the international mother societies like ASCE, IEEE, and so on. And the females are even more active in those societies. They occupy ranging from 20 to 90% of the administrative staff, and their membership from as low as 10% in mechanical engineering, particularly, to 80% in some other student societies. And what the focus about student societies, because they do hold a lot of activities, they do a lot of initiatives, so which increases the student skills, awareness, leadership skills, and so on, which resulted in, the results will show the impact of those societies on the students' awareness level. A quick review of the results that the preliminary study about the environmental awareness showed that regardless whether it's a male or female, the level of environmental awareness among students was unsatisfactory. If you look at the last column, do you read or watch environmental topics? Only 24% said yes. Do you attend environmental events? 48, no. Do you participate? No, and so on. If you look at the negative answers, most students, it shows a low level of awareness among students regarding environmental issues. And we made a quiz about climate change for students, and the grade of students was also low. They attained, the average was 42%, which is low, of course. But however, there was a difference between engineering and non-engineering students, which favors more engineering students. And when we ask students, why do you think engineering students attain more? And most of them, they accredited this to the nature of the engineering programs being multidisciplinary and its application oriented, which widen the students' horizon about global issues, including climate change. We found that female students generally have a significantly lower level of awareness in general, regardless whether engineering or non-engineering. However, in engineering, female students are much better in engineering. Females are much better than non-female students, than female students in non-engineering. Almost 45% score for engineering as compared to only 32% for non-engineering females. But for male, it's almost the same, whether engineering or non-engineering. And this was very much attributed again to the nature of engineering programs being multidisciplinary, action-oriented. So because of the culture of the local societies, females found more opportunities to widen their horizon, interact, and therefore gain more awareness regarding several issues, among which is the climate awareness, climate change awareness. And look at this interesting figure. 96% of students did not take any course in their program regarding environmental or climate change in their program, which is remarkable, which obviously needs to be changed. And this is also what students reflected. They strongly believe that the universities should integrate climate change and environmental issues more into their educational program. Strongly believe a score of 4 or 5 out of a 5-point scale. So obviously universities have to do to make these changes to adapt with the century interest and skills. When we focus about students in the scientific societies, generally, we found out that students who are members or participants of these scientific societies, they have significantly higher level of awareness on climate change as compared to students who do not engage in these societies. More remarkably, females, female students who are engaged in scientific societies are scored much better than female students who are not involved in scientific societies. We're talking about 46 score as compared to 36. For female, slightly higher, but not that much. Female students scored much higher who are enrolled in scientific societies. Again, this is an area or opportunity for students, female students, to widen their horizon, get more engaged with societal issues. The nature of the student societies, they hold a lot of activities. Some of them are technical, but more are non-technical, more societal, cultural, diversity activities. Therefore, students' horizon has been widened, obviously. So this is a quick conclusion, summary of the conclusions. So obviously, what we concluded, gender did not seem an issue as regarding to climate change awareness, although because all students, regardless whether male or female, they do have low level of awareness. However, when we talk about student societies, they obviously contributed positively towards enhancing, but more particularly, the female students' awareness level. As a matter of fact, they enhanced much more than just the awareness level. They had increased their overall skills, leadership skills, which we observe very clearly in our survey. Also, the existing curriculum in our university, as well I expect in several other universities worldwide, need to be changed. They need to spread more, to contribute more about spreading a reasonable level of awareness among students, not only towards the climate change, which is the focus of the study, but overall, regardless the sustainable development goals in general. So as a general recommendations, although universities, most universities, including An-Najah, they support the students' extracurricular activities, but obviously we need to do even much more, because this is an area where students excel and create great potential for themselves. And for our universities, as well as I assume several other universities worldwide, they need to actively integrate SDGs in their university system in various aspects. I would like to report one impact that this study had created at An-Najah. I shared the results of these studies, the results of this study with the Vice President for Academic Affairs. And the result was now the university is paying more attention to the SDGs, trying to actively get students more aware or more engaged in these issues. And as a matter of fact, just recently in May of this year, the university changed its team photos on Facebook, and it included the SDGs as part of its team picture. And not only that, the university dedicated 1 month for the next or for the coming 17 months, were adopted one of the 17 SDGs as for that particular month. And more interestingly, that university is currently restructuring. The university, each university had its university required courses. Now it's restructuring these courses with a more focus on the SDGs in terms of the content, as well as the approach, the teaching and learning, the evaluation approach, more on student skills and critical thinking rather than just knowledge-oriented courses. Another thing that the university is doing, developing something called 21st century among students in their programs. And some of these skills are directly related to the SDGs. So the university is asking each program to identify specific courses, and these courses would be targeting specific SDGs where students, skills would be improved and their knowledge would be improved in these courses. So that's a positive impact that this research has created on campus. And you can find the full article, which is published on sustainability. There is a lot more than what I just presented. You can read more, and I'm ready to answer any question about it. And thanks again, and looking forward for more cooperation among all members about the green travel, climate change, the SDG integration in our university educational system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Khaled. I had a PC crash for some minutes. I didn't hear your presentation, but I know your work on the journal you showed. So actually, I think that climate change and sustainability is not only a matter of a big organization of agreement, government, but everything starts with awareness, with education, with university, where the new generation can be educated and they can then take up individual behavior that can activate big changes like a cascade effect, like the famous butterfly effect. So I'm sure that Matteo Colleoni and also Maria has been very interested in what you said. Also, Matteo, I think you led a master on the jobs on sustainability that has much to do with what Khaled has been saying. Emilia, I see there is, of course, we open the questions to all the audience. You can, as Emilia said, you can write on the chat your questions, but there is just one question from one speaker to the other speaker. Khaled asked to Matteo how responsive the users, the students and staff were to the policy of limiting the use of private cars. So Matteo is to answer.
Sorry, Giuseppe, didn't understood very well because it was some noise. Sorry.
Khaled Al-Sahili asked to you how responsive the users, students and staff were to limiting the use of private cars. One of the strategies was limiting the use of private cars. Do we have a measure of the responsiveness to this policy?
Yes. Okay. So thank you, Khaled, for your question. The responsive have been very good from students, but not so much from staff and professor and the researchers, and notably not very good from staff, from employees. This is a problem. And at the same time, it's a little strange because student, okay, there is a reason. Okay, student, as I told you, and come from very distant places, more than 25 kilometers. So they take the train in order to get to the universities. And by contrast, the staff employees live more closer to the university on average in Italy. So they take and they use more car than students. This is one reason, and this is not good at all. But at the same time, and the use of a bicycle is better and from staff and professor compared to students for the same reason, because the students come from far away from the places of the universities. So, but with a very high differences between the different areas in Italy. For example, the best reaction is in big cities, like in Rome or Naples, Turin, Bologna, Florence, where we can when we have a better transport system, public transport system, of course. But we have also some interesting experiences in middle cities, like in Catania, for example, but Professor Inturri can tell many things about the Catania experience. But also in some cities in northeastern part of Italy, where we have many middle-sized cities. And in these cities, the public transport systems is very effective. So the answer of students and the staffs and the professor was very good in order to change a model choice from cars to public transport.
Yeah, I would just want to add that typical mobility management measures are, they call stick and carrot measure or push and pull measure. So limiting the cars should always be put in place together with an increase in the accessibility by other means of transport. So if you increase the frequency or the directness of public transport lines, then you are allowed to increase the charge for parking or reducing the supply of parking. So it's a complex of measures that should be put in place altogether to have the best effect, I think. Maria, what do you think about it?
Yes, I mean, in our case, for example, the fact that we always had a limitation on the number of parking spaces has acted in favor of people shifting. And so it is of course very well known that if you don't act upon something, sometimes it actually is a natural barrier to an increase in, say, private car use. So for us, an important policy decision which was taken in the 90s, that the university would not increase its parking allocation, was critical for us to be able to do all other things and control the amount of parking that we actually would naturally increase as the population increases. And so we are the only institution in the island that has this parking limitation. It is not easy to maintain it because it is very difficult to convince the administration, for example, that that is a good thing. They see it as a bad thing and they see it as a problem and they fight it out. And I'm the only one saying, no, we should not fight it out. So sometimes if you have a parking problem, you can actually use it as an advantage, because if you do not increase parking, then automatically your limitation becomes your opportunity. So, you know, you can have, I mean, we've had all sorts of, responses to, we don't have parking charges, for example. So we are still debating what we do with whether we have parking charges or not. Students introduced a small, tiny charge a few years ago, but it's not effective, of course, but at least there is some disincentive or some financial attachment. But it's parking, well, parking in the island as a whole is still a taboo. So you have to look at the context, of course, of the city or the region for each and every measure. But yes, I agree.
Thank you, Maria. Emilia, I lost the connection some minutes ago, so I don't have all the chats updated. Is there some questions still not to be? Okay.
No more questions.
So we are also out of time. So I take the opportunity to thank you all the speakers, all the people that has joined us. And I hope that some of the people connected will take into consideration the opportunity to join the subnetwork on transport and logistics, to actively participate. And also for those who are already members of the network, they might propose new topics for the next thematic seminars. So this was the one, I think, in my opinion, it was successful thanks to the contribution of our guest speakers. And so, Emilia, I think that we can say goodbye to everybody, and thanks all of you again.
But let me say thank you to all the audience, the speaker, and to you, Professor, from my side too. So thank you, everybody, and speak to you soon. Bye.
Thank you to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Giuseppe. Bye, Maria. Bye, Khaled.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.